Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Really means a lot to me. Look, a little bit, I know some of you guys and gals following the documentation of my journey, me documenting, like, through these videos, what's going on with UMA clinical trials. A lot of studies. Like, I've learned a couple of things being in an underserved market with no other competition. It's a lot easier, obviously, and it makes logical sense. It's a lot easier to get studies here than it was in a more competitive market like Los Angeles, like Orange County. Now, that's not to say you can't have a good site in those places like Miami, like Houston, where it is a little more saturated. It's just going to take you longer. But the cream always rises to the top in every market. All the stuff I talk about, networking and going to conferences, hopefully SOS, and getting on LinkedIn and getting leads from a company like DSCS and checking out free services like Inato, who's one of our sponsors. All those things work. Those are all things that work, but it just may take you longer in a more competitive market. So here in Yuma, I've been blessed with not necessarily having that problem. And definitely when it rains, it pours, because we are now in the process of site selection and study startup for about 6 studies. And they're all probably going to be getting started right around the same time. So, and new feasibilities are coming through. So this video is about how to select studies for your site. Obviously, it's very dependent on how many investigators do you have, right? One of the reasons why I think I've been able to get so many studies is I diversified into 5 different types of PIs. I have an internal medicine doctor, who was the first one. I have a dermatologist, who was the second. I have a psychiatrist and a neurologist, who's the third. I got a cardiologist, who I still haven't gotten a study for yet, but there is one potential. And then a pulmonologist, who we just signed up this month. And we're already getting 3 study offers sent our way through the medical science liaisons and one through Inato as well. So that's one of the other reasons why I've been so lucky, is I actually have a lot of PIs. I have a big bucket that I could catch more water. A lot of you guys watching, you only have one PI, maybe some specialist that's not hot right now. You have a small bucket. You're not going to catch a lot of water in a small bucket. Now, how do you select which studies you are going to accept? Because early on, you don't have this problem. You take whatever study you can get, whether the study's good or bad. My school of thought, the philosophy, where I come from, is you take it. You get that PI, their experience. Any study's a good study at this point. You're getting on the CRO database. You're getting on the sponsored database. You get to train your staff. You get to develop your SOPs in real time. You got to do that. Later, like around year 2, which is when it happened for me. Around year 2, and right now we're at year 2.5. We're almost going to be at year 3 in about 6 more months. Around year 2, you start getting selective, because you're going to start getting more studies. And again, in a competitive market, it might be year 3, it might be year 4. But you will eventually get to this point where you can actually turn down studies. And we have turned down studies. And even being more selective, we still end up getting studies that we can enroll for, and then in hindsight, I say, wow, I shouldn't have accepted this. I got too excited early on. And then you got to go back to the sponsor and let them know, hey, it's not working, here's why. Try not to do that too often. But when you're selecting studies, there is a school of thought that I actually disagree with on competing studies. A lot of sites think, okay, if I have a study for depression, I'm not going to get another study for depression. I'm going to get something else, maybe bipolar. It's not a bad strategy, but I wouldn't say to not get those second studies in the same indications as another study. Yes, sponsors are going to always ask, are they competing, and how can you guarantee us that they're not competing? First of all, from my experiences, you can always find something where the studies are unique. Always. Number two, so that's not an issue. Competition's not an issue. As long as you get those patients coming through your private practice, your PI's private practice, through community engagement, through the brand that you've hopefully built, through going out and talking to patients and their families in your sphere of influence, you should be able to have accumulated a database of patients at this point. But another reason why I love same indication studies is all your screen failures from one study. They're sad that they don't have a place that they can participate. Like, if you're a site in an underserved place like Yuma, and you only have one depression study, and you screen people, and 70% of them screen failed, is that it for them? That shouldn't be it for them. You should have another study. And those screen failures, by the way, they're the most likely to want to do another study of yours because they know the process already. Or even the patients that completed a trial, which happened to us right now. We have patients who completed a trial that can't wait till we start the new one. They want more options. So I think you owe it to your community, to your patients, to your business, to not discount same indication studies. Now, every site has limited resources, right? I think you should have a farm system where you are constantly developing talent at your site, meaning potential new coordinators. Start them out as research assistants, start them out as admins. Pretty soon we're gonna hire a new one who's an admin, hopefully a phlebotomist admin that can eventually become a coordinator. So you're always developing this farm system. Get interns to come in. That you can develop a farm system. A lot of sites just don't do this because there's no immediate ROI. But you'll thank yourself when you can actually say yes to a study and not say no because you're limited resources. Now, things like space, that's another thing. You can always lease additional space somewhere nearby your office. If you can't get additional space in the same building you're in, you can get an off-site location somewhere else. I suggest having a location for paperwork and storage and excess lab kits, because when you get these studies, they send you a bunch of supplies. Maybe an overflow patient site where in the event that all the exam rooms at your other site are occupied, you can still see the patient at an off-site location. Of course, add it to your 1572. Why wouldn't you? As just an additional location for the site. There's a place on the 1572 to put this. So, yes, we are limited in our resources, mainly our coordinators, our PI's time, and the space that we occupy, like the physical space. But those limitations, a lot of those are just self-imposed, especially the coordinator, having enough coordinators and the space. Like, you can actually have some control over those. The one variable you may not be able to have so much control over is your PI's time. But most PIs, as long as they're getting paid for each study, they're more than happy and they can enroll in each study, and you're taking care of the work for them so that they're not getting bombarded with queries and deviations and retrainings, because that's not going to last long, I'll tell you. As long as you do your job right, your PI is going to continue to want to do more studies, and they will make more time for you. And there's also workarounds that with increasing your sub-investigators, and this is why I like eSource, allowing the PIs to use eSource and to log in remotely and be able to have more oversight of their studies. Shout out to Creo. I think you should look to take on as many studies as you can. This doesn't mean say yes to every study that comes your way. You do want to enroll patients. But if you know you can enroll patients, I do not think you should deny that study just because you have competing studies. because I just broke down how most of the time they're not competing. If you really look under the hood, you're just going to have to explain it to the sponsor. And they actually pair nicely, like a wine, like a nice wine with a cheese, or a nice wine with some cold cuts, with some charcuterie board, right? A lot of times these studies that seem to be competing actually pair well. Also, a lot of times they're different indications, but they pair well, right? You may have a lot of diabetics with chronic kidney disease. Maybe you had a diabetes study where chronic kidney disease was exclusionary. I think you should take a chronic kidney disease study. You might have a bunch of screen failures from one study that you can enroll in the other study. So really think this through. Try to figure out ways to build a bigger bucket if that's the kind of growth you want. If not, I know sites that do not build a bigger bucket, right? They have their one therapeutic area. They're very selective about the studies they take and they do very well. That's fine. They probably got to figure out ways to grow their own way, unless they're satisfied with the revenue that they're getting year over year and they just want to maintain that. But my strategy is I'm in growth mode right now, and the bigger the bucket I could create, the more water I could catch. Like, subscribe, comment, share, Guru Nation. Thank you very much. Good luck out there. Bye-bye.